What's going to happen are things that only have the residual of the past until that clears. There's going to be things that you didn't expect, things that will clear and work differently, and you won't even believe it. It's not supposed to be that way. You've learned, for instance, that politics is only one way for hundreds of years. Suddenly in the light, well, not so much. It's going to start changing. There might even be integrity. There might even be reason and compassion. There might even be common sense on how to pick leaders differently than you ever have before. And yet there will be those that say, impossible, eventually it'll corrupt just like it did before. Do you see what I'm saying? You cannot carry the disappointments from the past, or even human nature itself. You can't carry it into the future, because everything is starting to change. Watch how you think about these things. When certain things pop up in the news or whatever, and they seem like way out of kilter from the way things used to be, there's a tendency for humans to say, well, that won't last. And then it does. And then you have to think about it. Can you be fresh with it? Can you make an affirmation that would say, I expect only benevolent change, wisdom, to start to develop in the things that didn't used to have them. I expect change to be benevolent. I don't expect it to be as it was. And I'm going to do my best to project the positive things into everything I see, into the future. That was number 5, and this is the last one, number 6. A change that may not seem like it's that difficult, but oh boy, is it. It is the subject of the day. I want you to learn to relax with life. Can you do that? Because, dear ones, I'll say it again. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And when the step back happens, the monster called fear will want to cover up everything you've ever done. That's good. It'll want you to forget the light and go backwards into dark. This is going to take a while. There are going to be disappointments. There are going to be challenges. Don't let them derail you on this beautiful train that you're on. Understand. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's not going to be a linear climb of a ladder of enlightenment for humanity. It's going to take its toll on some. Some won't be able to stay on the train. That's already happened. Some will see it and say, too difficult for me, and not join you. And all the while, I'm asking you to relax. What you have learned today and the day before and the day before is on purpose. How to align hearts. The processes of alignment between human beings as a group, individuals in 2s and 4s, is going to be critical. And you're going to be having to practice this in order to stay balanced, and so you don't take on others' problems and call them your own and let them burden you and take you down. That balance is necessary for what you're going to see the earth go through. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Can you do that? Now that you have been alerted of how it works and the expectations, did you notice that the teaching is becoming more specific from Kryon? And that all these years up to 2012 was a preparation so that you would know who Kryon was. and the integrity and the beauty and the love that I see for humanity. And now the teaching begins. To get you through the shift, old soul, so that you'll understand what is happening, why it's happening. Put your hand on your heart and be peaceful and know you exist for a reason. You are the light of this planet. Don't let anybody put it out with doubts or fears of what you are, what you're doing. That's enough for today. And so it is.
Hi everybody, thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive. Hi everybody, thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. It's a sweet place, this. The message is a continuation of the messages we have given so far in this which is called the Monument Valley Tour. It's message number 6. It's given on February 14th in your year of 2019, which according to your culture and your custom is Love Day. The message today would be no different than any other about love, except that it's more appropriate than ever. So again, dear ones, please allow me, with the blessing of the ancestors in this place, to one more time, for the ears perhaps of those who've not heard it, to reveal some things that we've revealed before, perhaps a little differently, that talks about the majesty of the creative source. Almost every human on the planet, no matter what belief system, knows about the creative source. And as the belief would go, the entire universe was created by one source. Infinitely small you are compared to the universe, and yet infinitely large is the creative source. And if you wanted to put a personality on that source, as often you do as humans, the source is love. Pure love. Nothing but love. As pure as light can be, it is with no darkness at all. Beautiful, benevolent, compassionate love. And we've said it before, as much love as you can imagine for your friends, your pets, your child. It's 1,000 times what that is. And it's focused, dear ones, on the living portions of the creative source, which is you. Dear ones, there's other life in this galaxy, and it's focused on that as well. The creative source is the source of everything. And there's love imbued in that purity in everything. And the reason I start with this yet again, is to let you know that you, dear ones, have created this veil that you look through to that love. And on this side of the veil, this being where we are right now, this human side, you have duality. And in the duality, there is positive, there is negative, there's light, there's dark, there's all kinds of things which are created by what you call human nature. And it's actually appropriate, fair, and correct, because this gives you the free choice. Because you can see the things that are yin and yang, positive and negative, and you make the choice. But let me tell you something. On the other side of the veil, that creative source, which is so big you can't imagine it, there is no duality there. And there would be those who would say, of course there's no duality there, and they would nod their head. And yes, but really, truly, do you understand this? There's only duality here. And yet, there are so many who will then take the duality that is here in this small little earth, where you struggle with a low percentage of light. And you struggle with your duality, and you struggle to improve constantly with free choice. But you take that struggle and you place it upon what you believe is on the other side of the veil. And you have made God then dysfunctional at the core. You've taken this love, pure source, and you said, well, we are humans. All we know is human nature. Therefore, everything has to be like us. And then there is an angry God, and one who does not get pleased all the time, and one who would actually torture children. And this is the belief system about that beautiful creative source. And again, I will tell you, you've taken yourselves and pasted it on that which is sacred. Let's speak about where that leads and what happens. Because the next step is the creation then of sin. And if you would then ask those who believe in the sin, what is it? Define sin. It's that which displeases God. Anything that displeases God then is sin. And then if there is sin, there must be forgiveness. Let me tell you something, dear ones. Pure love, at the absolutely purest of love, is unable to be displeased. God does not have a human brain that has pleasure and not pleasure, or judgment or not judgment. Pure love is pure love. It doesn't even enter. It cannot. It's like taking the purest light you could ever imagine and trying to throw mud at it and thinking it'll stick like it sticks on you. And yet there are billions on the planet that have put mud on God. Forgiveness, dear ones, in a spiritual world is almost an industry. I want you to think for a moment. If you took children and wanted to make a test of their free will, and you put them in a dark place where they could barely see, and then they run into walls and they run into each other, and every time they run into a wall or run into each other, you dock them and call it sin, and you punish them. You take them out, punish them, put them back. Because they ran into a wall because they couldn't see well. That's exactly what you have said God does to you. Not all of you, but billions of you. And this, dear ones, will be part of the shift, a spiritual awakening of logic. God is not human. God would not do that. And yet sin has created forgiveness, an industry. If you don't think it's an industry, even within the spiritual, just look at your history. We sat in a place you would call Italy, and we spoke of a man you would call Francis, in a place you would call Assisi. And the most sacred of leaders at that point in time was the Pope in Italy. And that Pope at that moment was selling forgiveness of sin. Inappropriate to the max, you might say. And Francis saw it because Francis was pure and he was filled with the love of the creative source. He wasn't filled with the pompousness of the Pope. The story of Francis is quite amazing. For today he's Saint Francis, and yet he never was a priest. But he was attractive. Like any other master of this planet who is pure, he was attractive because of his purity and his love. And even the priests of the church were attracted to him because of what he believed and said, how he acted, what he did in his life, what he showed people he could be. That was Francis. We've told you before that he bribed the Pope. For he needed money for his enclave. He needed money for his animals. He needed money for his hospital. And so he told the Pope something, because the Pope met with him. He had to, because he was pulling away priests. He was becoming dangerous in his purity. And he said to the Pope, if you'll give me the money for these things, I will then stop being that attractive, because you will then stop selling forgiveness of sin. And that was the agreement. And in the church in Francis of Assisi, there's even a painting that portrays it, although the people who would then guide you through that church won't then identify that painting of that way. In fact, that painting shows Francis of Assisi and the Pope meeting with a scroll of demands from Francis to the Pope. A list, you might say, an agreement, you might say, so the Pope would stop selling sin forgiveness. The guides will tell you it's a list of Francis' sins. I'm going to tell you it's in a contract that changed who the Pope was, changed the church, and made it more pure. That's the kind of an industry forgiveness has become to some. In some ways, it becomes an industry of fear. If you don't have that kind of forgiveness from a God who's going to judge you from that pure love thing, then there's the fear of what might happen to your soul. And these things, dear ones, are not from God. They cannot be from the pure source of light and love, which is not a consciousness of a human. It has come from humans to humans, humanity, systems. The most inappropriate thing that is here today on this planet is fearing the source of light, when all that source wants to do is love you. Love is the message of the day. Earlier today, dear ones, you had a forgiveness exercise, but it had nothing to do with a spiritual forgiveness. It had to do with human to human. And that is the forgiveness I want to speak of. I want to talk about what it means, and perhaps in a way you haven't heard before. I want you to right now relax in the arms of God, whatever that word means to you, just for a moment, and see that precious pure light as I tell you this story. The story is, again, a logic story. More than that, it defines the attributes of your brain. So you'll understand what you're doing when you start to forgive. Coming right from the light, right now, I want to show you this. When each of you were a child, there came a time when you had that moment where you would burn your hand or your arm or your leg with something hot. It happens to every child, because as much as their parents will warn them against heat, there comes a time when you test it. And at that moment when you burn your hand or your finger, as a child, dear ones, even before you can speak, that episode will etch itself into the neurons of your brain. in the synapse of the place in the bundles where memories are kept, the burning of the hand is there all your life. Now, the reason I tell you this, in a moment you'll find out, it's permanent. It would be nice if you could undo it, if you could delete it, but you can't. Your brain is not like the current day computer. There's no delete key. It stays there. It stays there. Now, in the case of burning your hand, it's survival. It stays there because it needs to stay there. So you won't forget it. But that's the way of the brain. But it also happens with something else. Dear ones, it happens with betrayal. It happens with unkindness. It happens with the trauma of experience. It happens with abusive parents to children. All of that etched upon the brain. And at time, perhaps even when you're an adult, when you have betrayal, when you have these kinds of things, it etches itself in the same place where you burned your hand. And in those places, it stays, and you can't undo it. And so today, you went through an exercise where you might have written some of those things down, and it might have been difficult to even write them. Because these are the things you want to forget. Because to remember them brings up all the feelings again, just like burning your hand. And all of those feelings will come to a head, and there will be tears, and there will be uncomfortableness and sorrow. And so most of you stay away from those things, but all of you have them to some degree, more than others for some. And you wrote them down, which was difficult, and you burned them in a significant ceremony to say, they're gone. This is how I see it. They're gone. But I just told you they're not. But your ceremony is telling your brain that they are. Let me tell you what you did today, and anyone else listening, and the parables I've given in the past about what a Lemurian woman would do as she burns the leaf that she has etched on these things into the volcano fire. Because I've even channeled before that this is an appropriate thing to do, as you did today. So let me give you a vision of how you take something in your brain that is forever until your last breath, just like burning your hand, and instead you transform it. Whatever that was that you wrote on the piece of paper, or for those listening who didn't do the exercise, whatever it is that you could think of that is the betrayal of the thing that eats at you at night when you sleep or doesn't let you sleep. The thing that can't forget because it was so awful to you, so uncomfortable, so sorrowful to you. Whatever it is, even if it's a memory where you're asking forgiveness of yourself because you keep bringing it up and beating yourself like a little whip with it, it's still there. So I want you to have this vision of what really might be happening in your brain, what you do. And it has to do with the power of compassion and love. In the yin and yang scenario, in the black and white scenario, of all the things that a human being can do, one of the most beautiful things is this. You have a piece of the creative source in you that is multidimensional and goes beyond that which any human being could do by themselves, and it's called the higher self. That higher self, think of this, it's your soul that has one foot on the other side of the veil and one foot here, metaphorically, as it would stand there. It is the conduit, the bridge, the one that you're always trying to get to. But let me tell you, here's where you can use it. Because that higher self is also like a direct contact, conduit, wire, whatever, to the purest light and love you can imagine. And so let's see if you can vision this because of what you did today with the fire, and you have that pure, bright light like a searing fire, except it's not a destructive fire. It's an encompassing connection that circles the memory with compassion. There it is in your brain, and I want you to see, coming from the other side of the veil, a shell. You can't delete it biologically, but here comes that beautiful shell of compassion that is so beautiful and so loving, and it encircles that memory, that thing that you want to have go away, that you say, I want to forgive that person or those people or myself, whatever that's the encompassing shell of multidimensional light that encompasses and forgives. And it goes right around that memory in your brain, so that every single time you go back to that, it's covered with forgiveness, compassion, and love, and you can never get to that hurtful place again. So complete would it be that you could even go in there with a set of tools, and you can't get to it. So what you've done is, instead of eliminating it, you've transmuted it, covered it with love. This has to make sense to you. The vision is more accurate than you know. It has to do with complex consciousness, dear ones. And so we've simplified it so that it can be visualized and acted upon and understood. There are those who will tell you that those things that you wrote on the paper are forever. And I'm here to say they're right. But how you treat them and how they work with your consciousness from now on in your life is not forever and can be transmuted. Psychologists have worked on this for decades. And here it is yet again, in a way I'm presenting. And I'm telling you this, it's permanent. In a linear world, there are so many things that you do over and over and over and over because more is better. In a multidimensional world, once you throw the switch, it's forever. That's much different. There'll be those who tell you how many times you have to count the beads in order for certain things to happen, or how many times you have to say a phrase before God will hear you. I'm telling you this. God knows you so well that if you simply look into the eyes of the Creator, it's gone. One time. That's how powerful you are with yourself. So I want you one more time to envision that burning piece of paper today that you had. And see not only the paper smoldering and going away, but suddenly the connection to the other side of the veil coming in and covering those things, whether it was you who had to forgive yourself or you're forgiving somebody else. Doesn't matter. Whatever memory. There's somebody in the audience needs to hear this because there was a death of a child. And that is something profound, Mom. You're never going to forget that. And it's so sorrowful. You start putting that together, where you put that compassion, and then you start having all of these revelations. And the revelation is that the soul of the child is still here smiling and saying, thanks, Mom. I never wanted to etch something in there like that. I want you to listen. Only wanted love, only wanted love, only wanted love. The person you're forgiving on the planet, they may or may not still be alive. It's the best they could do in that yin and yang world. It's the best they had. And it wasn't good enough for you. And it etched something in your brain. Today you cover it with that compassion from the source and the light. So you can't get to it anymore. And suddenly you start to breathe easier and saying, it's like I just dropped a big suitcase of lead. That I'm free. It's almost like I can float now. Because I don't have to take that anymore. I don't have to bring that around, and I don't have to drag it like an anchor. because you've covered it with compassion. This is as good as it gets, dear ones, for a human being to be balanced. You can't carry these things and call yourself a balanced human being, because you're out of balance. You're always dragging something around. And so this is how it's done. And it shouldn't surprise you on this Valentine's Day that I would yet again tell you about the incredible love that is on the other side of the veil for you. Not anger, not fear. God does not think like a human being. God, the creative source, if you can even say think, has no thoughts except, if you had to say what is a thinking God, it is one who projects, propels, and throws light and love and compassion as best can to you through a dark and dim place that you are slowly creating light within. And that is why we are so excited about the shift. Because there'll come a time when that dimness will go away. And the veil starts to become thinner. Mark my word, there'll be a day when you look back sometime in human history and you will see all the things that I have mentioned about the projection of the human onto God as a children's story. And you'll know the truth. God is love. And so it is.
Hi everybody, thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive. Hi everybody, thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. What you see here as you listen, as you watch, some of you, is admittedly beyond that which you would expect in the reality that you live in when you're not in this room. The very fact that you have come here collectively to watch this, to feel the energy, says that it is not necessarily something that you see all the time. Or perhaps you expect something different. Perhaps you're hanging on the words to find something special. The channelings that are at the end of these days for this kind of workshop are different. Because we talk about who's in the room. Sometimes the room is those who are listening later for you, now for me. It's more of a personal channel than that which is information which we would list as we have done before. And so we go right to the point. What happens when you leave? When the channel is over, if you're listening to this later, and you get up out of your chair and you go wherever it is that you go, what happens? Right now in this room, there is an entourage, and we've talked about it before. We invite you to discern that there is one. We invite you to discern that this channeling is not my partner talking. We invite you to discern the love of God, Spirit, whatever you wish to say. This is the energy that has taught with the masters of this planet over and over. Through major cultures and minor ones, through the ancients and the indigenous, to the energy of Gaia and more. This is what is taught in this time. But what happens when you leave? The linearity of your minds and that which you call real life causes a diminishing in energy when you're not in a group. The entourage is here and it's precious, and we invite you to feel the energy of this entourage. Group, there are those here today in front of me, collectively, that create a certain consciousness, an attribute of what happens when Merkabahs intertwine. You're all sitting in each other's energy, and it creates a larger energy. And then you go home. Some of you will go home with the others you came from. Many will go home alone. There may be family at home, but you really go home alone. And when you get there, what do? How real is this later? No matter what we do right now, no matter what we discuss and what we talk about, I've said this before for years. This is the part where you sit and I sit, and there's a love exchange together, where some of you can actually feel the creative source and know you're okay. Some are healed in these meetings. Because collectively, because there is this attribute of togetherness, it creates an energy that allows healing. Do you really have to come to a meeting to get this? I want to say something. I want to say welcome to the new earth, where any one of you can go home and create the entourage. Any one of you. I want to tell you, I double dare you. My partner's words. To become the master that you are. The masters who walked the planet did not walk in a group. They walked alone. And what they carried was everything alone. And if you wanted to know what was going on in many of their minds as human beings, there was doubt. There was shock and surprise sometimes at what happened around them and the reactions to them. But they were self-sufficient in their love. They knew who they were. And that alone created an entourage. They walked from place to place. And the people who saw them walk there said, "This is different." Perhaps you heard the reports that even the animals knew it was different. And this is where you're going. There is an eventuality, a potential. The snowball is rolling. That every single old soul, every human being who awakens to their own greater power will start to change chemically. The DNA will start to enhance itself physically. There will be more awareness inside. And you're going to last longer. You're going to have revelations by yourself of who you are. And the biggest issues will be things like self-responsibility, awareness of situations you're in that you shouldn't necessarily be in, not in order to let yourself grow. Some of you know very well what I'm talking about. And growth also creates some uncomfortable times. but the masters had them as well. What are you going to do when you go home? Let me ask you a question. Is this meeting a crutch for you? Do you have to come to a meeting like this in order to feel the euphoria of the love of God? Or can you walk out of this place standing tall and say, I can create this in a closet? Now here's the next question. You're with others and they're not of like mind. Can you create it then? Can you walk this euphoric way with Spirit inside you, giving you right what you might feel now, and be with others who don't agree and are giving you a bad time? What's going to happen when you leave here? Today, there were questions, there were an attempt at answers, and almost uniformly, all over the planet, the questions to channelers, to teachers, to Spirit itself are all the same. And the questions have to do with what, where, how, when, and why. It's almost like every single one of you needs to understand the mechanics of everything esoteric in order to take the next step. And that's human nature. And I'm going to say this, I'll say it again. Why do you do that? Is it really, really necessary? Dear ones, I give you the example yet again. You have a machine called the human body. It's a chemical machine. It gets you from A to B, birth to death. And it operates by itself without you thinking much about it. It's designed that way. And you work this machine during your life, and as you grow up, you learn about it. Some of you are able to control it by the health that you put into it, by the food and all the other things that you put into it. And that's about it. That's about it. Your consciousness, as you've discovered, can alter it, can make it last longer. But it operates by itself. Do you really have to be a physician and study every piece and part to walk from A to B? And the answer is no. You get into the automobile, and it gets you from A to B. And you never ever think to yourself, I must understand the workings of the internal combustion engine in order to get to A to B. Ever, you never. Because it simply works. Now I'm going to say this yet again. The awakening process of the human being that is spiritual and filled with purpose in this age has automatic mechanics that work within you. As you're aware of shift and change, Spirit is working with you. How many of you are aware of what happens when you awaken at 3 in the morning? And there are many of you who do. And do you wake up and wring your hands and go, what do you want? Or do you have the balance to raise your hand and say, thank you, Spirit, for keeping me awake? Because I recognize I'm being worked on. There's things that need repair and help. There are things that need to be enhancing. I don't have to know what they are. Thank you. You see, It's a system that is designed to work in an old soul by itself. If you open the door, light is coming in, and you don't have to analyze the waveform of it. You don't have to measure the door. You don't have to know why. You really don't. Instead, dear human being, I want you to feel it. It's either appropriate or it's not. That's what free choice is about. Is it fearful? Does it feel good or not? Discernment is not about the minutia of how it works, how long it's going to take, and where it's going. The old soul is beginning to awaken to a bigger purpose and idea. That these things come along when they should, and the more calm you are about all of them, the better they're going to work. But they're going to be stopped if you start to analyze what, why, where, who, and when. It's just going to be stopped. Because those answers, dear ones, are not available in a linear way. You all have fallen in love. All of you. Whether it's with another human being, whether it's with a master, whether it's with an animal. And it's palatable. It's beautiful. It changes your chemistry. You look at each other, human beings, in your eyes, and you're in love. And I've said this before. Do you then stop and analyze it? Do you say, well, what's happening? I can't fall in love unless I know the minutia of it. You don't. Of course you don't. Of course you don't. You enjoy it. You fall into each other's arms and you enjoy it. And there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. God is in love with you. And there's nothing like it. And I want to invite you to fall into the arms of that which is already inside you, called the higher self, which has the creative energy of the love of God. You fall in love. And stop asking why, or when, or how. There are answers, basic answers about the shift of the planet, where you're going, what really truly is happening. It's about an ascended human race. Human by human, case by case, thinking differently on a pathway that is of a higher vibration. The result, longer life, peace on earth. We've said it before. But dear ones, this is a metaphysical, esoteric principle you're getting from A to B. It's way too complex for you to put it in a box, especially the box of 3D. And there are those who will leave here, and when they walk out the door, everything that was here stays here, because you just didn't get it. That everything that is taught here is you. It's not from the one on the stage. It's available inside you. Tonight, before you go to sleep, I invite you to retire into a room that's yours only. And I want you to think upon these things. You might even raise your arm and say, Dear Spirit, if you're there, show me. And you're going to get chills. You'll feel even your eyes are closed, that perhaps a light is bright and shining on the top of your head. And the higher self is going to wink at you and say, it's about time you ask. And you can carry that light everywhere you go. By yourself. Alone. If you are fortunate enough to have a partner or family members or associate that feels the same as you do, now you're a group. It carries even more power, for where there are two or more, it's exponential. But dear ones, it starts with you. Do you dare ask the question, dear Spirit, what is it I need to know? And you won't get a voice. You won't get handwriting on the wall. You'll get guidance, intuition, and love. This is the new human being. The one who accepts something that is complex, that affects their lives, their emotion, everything, and they don't understand it. But they don't have to. Because the design is that this, dear one, is going to get you from A to B without you knowing why. Can you do that? Discern it with your emotional heart. If you need to analyze it from a point of correctness of feeling. Don't analyze it from what you've been taught it should be, or what normally happens, or what you think happens. There is not one of you who really knows what happens, not even the one in the chair. Everything we have given you is extremely simple, because that's where you are right now. You're in a simple place with simple concepts, working a simple puzzle that is enormously complex. Just like the engine of your car. It's going to get you there if you let it. Do not fear the love of the creative source in your life. Maybe it's time you heard that. When you leave this place and you go home, what's going to happen? The ones listening to this, when you get up out of the chair and go in the other room and you're done listening to the channel of Kryon, are you going to take this with you, or are you going to shut it off? My partner calls it throwing the switch. You live a life, you go to a building and you worship, you dress for it, you come home, you live your life. A and B. And it's time that stopped. I want you to leave this place differently than you came. The entourage is making a lot of noise right now. You can't really hear it with your ears, but you can feel it with your heart. You are known by God, by name. It's time you left and knew that. Climb into the closet and be known by God, by name, with a light shining on your head. That's the message for today. It'll be the message as long as I'm here. And so it is.
Hi everybody, thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive. Hi everybody, thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. We pause for a moment. My partner steps aside, but he is still here. And this is a very difficult concept for anyone. When he speaks of it, it's difficult. Channeling creates an interesting energy. It often affects things around you. He has a hard time explaining that. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about linear things. I want to talk about, again, assumptions. And it's all about you. Now, this is the end of a workshop, and I know that. I know who is in here, in the building. I know the energies that we are creating together right now. Some of them are strong enough to make batteries fail and alarms to go off. This is what happens with multidimensional things that are outside of linearity. There are energies that you develop that are unexplainable. Now, this goes two ways. It really does. And I really want to speak to you clearly about some things that are assumed to be linear, and they're not. There is teaching that has been given this weekend about so many pieces and parts of the new energy, both of the physical body, of the mind, the consciousness, the planet, and it can be overwhelming, especially for the light worker who is trying to linearize it all. One of the most difficult things for you to conceive of is that relationship that has been talked about all weekend. You have so many names for it. There's the higher self, there's the pineal, there's the innate, there's high consciousness, there's love. And the overwhelming thing about all of these is, as you listen to them, as you have teaching about them, you start to put them in boxes. Let me give you an example. Innate, the smart body for you, is connected to the pineal, and the pineal is connected to the higher self. It involves your intuition, and we have said through affirmations in this new energy are probably one of the strongest things that you can use for self-healing. For situational things, all manner of things. But then you've confused it with God. I want you to get out of the boxes for a moment and listen. Your cellular structure is not working efficiently, and it needs help. Your cellular structure is not God. Now, God is inside you, but the cellular structure is something that is now increasing in efficiency, in communication. Your innate is starting to marry more with your consciousness. I want you to put that aside for a moment. That is one issue. But the love of God, your purpose, your consciousness, your relationship with Spirit, that's a whole nother issue. Don't put them together. There are so many things that you want to put in a little box and then combine it with another little box in order to put another box on top of that box and say what comes first, what comes second, what comes third. If you do this, what happens over here? And that leads to something. It leads to a life where you are constantly asking the question, am I doing it right? Is it in the right order? Why isn't this happening now? I've done this, but this happened. Those are great questions for a linear creature, but not one who is an old soul on the planet, who is part of everything. Yes, Dear ones, there are processes and procedures that you are learning to work with your innate. And that's what this was about today. You've taken pictures of them, you've written them down, and you walk out with some information that is so valuable about you and your cellular structure and your biology at this time in humanity. But dear ones, don't confuse it with the love of God. Listen to me. There are many here right now asking the question about what's next, why is this happening? And you're looking to the innate for the answer. Innate talks to your cellular structure. If you've got a health problem, you'll be talking to innate. But you're also going to talk to the consciousness that's connected to spirit. Between the two of you, the innate, the consciousness, and that part of you which is the love of God, all of you together are going to create solutions. Not just one. But there's one big one, an assumption I want to talk about right now. It's difficult to even describe where I'm going with this. So many in the room, so many listening, are trying to find out how to get past something. How to get over the wall, perhaps, of fear. Or how to broach something that hasn't happened and you know it's there, you can feel it's there. And you know how to do it. You come to a place like this, you learn about innate, you learn about the balanced breathing, you learn about all the things that a light worker in this energy is starting to realize that it's a whole body experience. But don't confuse that with the love of God. There are certain hurdles that you're trying to get through. And dear ones, innate cannot help you with that. Innate wants to heal your body. Innate wants to pull on Akashic things to heal your body. Innate wants to work with that which has happened before, even in this lifetime, in order to change cellular structure. You need it. You need to live longer. But don't confuse that with the hurdle of fear. Especially the hurdle of enlightenment. I have got some information for you that is so difficult to communicate. So I want you to feel it. It's one of the only times that I have been in front of those sitting in the chairs where I've said, your language is not sufficient. I want to communicate something to you, a way to get through the hurdle. A way to walk through this, to get to that place that is next. So many of you are frustrated. I can see it in you, in the Merkaba. There is a frustration. You're just not quite sure of what it is. It goes beyond language. And so I'm going to give it to you, both with language and with what I will call the third language. Now, the third language is not a language at all. It's a catalytic energy of communication that Spirit uses with you that goes into the very consciousness of those who are ready to receive it. It's the big aha. A scientist sits with a puzzle. He knows that it's doable. He's got something to figure out. He's looking for something that's impossible. He's looking for a discovery. He knows it's coming. And he looks at it and he works the puzzle. He tries this and that and this and that. He calls in his colleagues. They work on it together. This and that and this and that. Nowhere is there a solution. Every single time he tries something, it fails. It's interesting, and if you talk to scientists, they will tell you that this is the way of it. They can feel it, that a solution in physics or science or biology is right there in front of them, and no matter what they do, it doesn't show itself. And they look at the logic of it, and they build the little boxes, and they work all of the puzzles. They do the computations. They work the puzzle. Nothing. Nothing. And they retire for the night. The scientist he's tired of computing, turns on the television and watches a movie. Disengages his mind completely with the puzzle, ready to attack it tomorrow. Watching a movie about nothing when suddenly the solution comes. Something is so obvious, of course. Slaps his head, gets out of bed, goes to write it down, does the computations, voila, the solution. What just happened? What happened was the scientist disengaged logic and accidentally, without even thinking about it, suspended every part of the problem that was in his psyche, dropped all of the barriers because it was no longer time to do the work. And so the barriers are gone. The disengagement of science was complete. The movie was being watched, and in comes the solution that was always there, waiting for the barrier to come down of logic. You don't know what you don't know. How can you possibly work this puzzle with things that you don't know about? Dear ones, you are overworking the puzzle. I want you to just suspend your logic for a moment and follow me. The solution to what many of you are asking for lays there right now with your name on it, waiting for you to stop thinking about it. I want you to erase the whole idea of how do I. Because the very English synapse is wrong. How do I is not going to work with a multidimensional human being who is an old soul who is learning things they don't know yet. You're learning things you don't know yet. So how can you possibly apply your three-dimensional logic to a puzzle that is beyond the logic? It's only when you suspend it and you give up and you say to Spirit, and Nate is over here, I'm working the puzzle, but what about the really big one? What about the fear of moving forward, of going to the next place, of overcoming this or this or this or this? And there's many thises as there are people. It's the spiritual that we're talking about now. It's the relationship and the communication we're talking about to God right now. It's about your life and your lessons and what you're here for. Don't talk to Nate right now. I want you to think about this, but not too hard. I want you to imagine just for a moment that the barrier that you know is there, keeping you from things, is slowly dissolving through no effort of yours at all other than the intent to go beyond it. That there is some kind of a mechanism that you don't understand, that you don't know about, that is so powerful, that remembers and recognizes when you suspend belief, drop your logic, and simply allow it to happen. like the scientist who had it figured out. There was a solution, but no amount of working the puzzle worked. I want you to combine this intent you have with the idea and the belief that there is a greater power of creation who knows your name, knows who you are, and is ready to help you right now. That greater power, and that is the creative source, has been with you all along. But the barrier that has kept you disconnected from it is the very thing you thought would solve it. Your logic, your survival, your smarts as a human being. Can you let it go? Can you just let it go? If you can see that barrier dissolving just for a moment, for no other reason than the fact that you're sitting here and allowing it, I want you to also vision the second thing. And that is the connection of your hand to Spirit coming out of that dissolving barrier and taking the hand of God. And you don't know why, and you can't figure it out. You don't know what's happened, and no idea. But suddenly, it's okay. Fear is a product of intellectualism. Did you hear that? It comes from the brain. The computer that says don't touch the stove because you get burned. That's where it comes from. It doesn't come from God. It doesn't come from that which is your intuition. Right out of your brain. And it requires that the human being be able to disengage the very thing that has been their survival forever. You don't have to disengage and walk around without it just for the moment. You got to learn to balance the survival instrument with the heart, with the pineal, letting the trilogy work within you. There are people in this room who have been waiting to hear this who will heal because of it. Did you hear me? Aren't you tired of trying? Could it be this simple? And the answer is it's not simple to drop survival. But it's an elegant solution. When you figure it out and you slap your head and go, wow, all I had to do was let go. I'm talking to those right now who are here sitting in the seats, and there's thousands more who are listening and will listen to the message of who's sitting in the seats. This isn't for the masses. This is for you. I know who you are. Spirit knows who you are. There's a celebration, the fact that you came here to listen to this message, and some will get it and some won't. What you came for today can happen right now if you let go. Some of you will walk out of here saying, well, that was a nice message, but I'm not sure I can let go, and not aware that you did. Because it starts to change right away. And you'll feel it tonight before you go to sleep. I dare you. Put your hand on your heart tonight before you go to sleep and say, thank you, Spirit. I got what I came for. And if somebody overhears that and say, well, how did that work? You can say, I have no idea. But it works. Don't try to figure out how things happen, or they won't happen. Not in this energy. Not where this is going. You're going to have to cross that missing bridge, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it was a channel given in 1994, 95, again in 96. Some of the first things I told you was to trust the unknown and know that you're in the hands of God. And now it comes full circle. That's the message. There's so many of you needed to hear that right now, tonight. You don't have to be stuck where you think you're stuck. Not when you let it dissolve like this. Not when you trust the unseen and never ask, how do I do this? You can raise your hand and say, thank you, Spirit, for doing what I need in my life now. I don't know why I ever doubted it. And you walk away, and some of you will say, it's an incompleteness if I don't know how it was accomplished. The more you do this, the less incomplete you will feel. And there'll come a time when you will count on the unseen that makes no sense at all, where you'll be able to drop your survival instrument and ignore your brain, who tells you that this is foolishness, and realize that the brain is in 3D, but you are not. A new integration is upon you. The unseen things come into your life and begin working. And you haven't got a clue why, except that you know you're connected. That's all you have to know. And somebody asks, how did you do this? And you can say, I'm connected. That's how I did it. And you know what the others will say? They won't say, well, I'm not going to do it because I don't understand it. They're going to look at you and say, you did it. And they're going to say, show me how to get connected. And that's what the old soul is here to do. It's a cryptic message, isn't it? And some of you got it through the third language and feel it and know it and are accepting it and are having a change right now. And some of you are going to get it later. I guarantee it. Because we got some stubborn ones here. Not for long. You may have to listen again. And the same language of the three will be available for you then. This is the beauty of working with those who are old souls. There is an accumulation of wisdom, stubborn as it may be, that starts to then make sense with time. I am Kryon giving you the truth this day about an evolving human spirit who is starting to become more multidimensional than ever. It is the beginning. Color is coming to this planet, and the old souls have the crayons. That's no relation to Kryon. But it sounds a lot like it, doesn't it? And so it is.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive. Hello, I'm Lee Carroll.
So make yourself comfortable wherever you are sitting and tuning in to watching this happen now or listening. Allow your body to relax. Relax your head, relax your shoulders, relax your arms and your hands. Relax your chest, relax your back. Relax your abdomen, your thighs, your knees, your calves, and your feet. And feel the energy of the earth connecting up through your feet, up through your calves, your knees, your thighs, your abdomen, your chest, your back, your hands, your arms, your shoulders, and traveling up through your head and out the top of your head, and connecting to the universal field that surrounds you and is biased in love. And from this place, let us give permission and a willingness to take the hand of Kryon as we hear the message to be delivered.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. Blessed is the human being who sees themselves as we do on the other side of the veil as worthy of hearing truth, of worthy of having that which has always been possible for them. Blessed is the human being who sees the magnificence of their soul as created by that which you would call God. The creative source has many names, many cultures. Sometimes the word God is not the one you want to use only because of the stigma of what you've been told about the word. It's not necessary. God has so many names, one of them being God. Some of them so precious to some, they don't even pronounce it. That creative source is seen by so many as the perfect love source of the universe, creator of all things. The most beautiful thing of that creator is that which is you. On this planet, you play the prime role. We have told you for so long that because of this, the indigenous wisdom tells you to ally with that which is nature, with that which has the name Gaia. That's just one of many things you have been told. There are so many hidden things because of your culture, things that your culture has not brought forward from the past, things that your culture does not believe, that you haven't been taught, and yet they are the staple of those who've lived on this planet for so long. So part of this, the channeling, the healing, all that is being taught, is trying to connect you again, not to what you've lost, but what you simply haven't been told. It's there, dear ones. All of it is there. I want to talk yet again to this group who is listening, who may never have heard this. Do you know what innate is? If I said something about that which is your innate, would you know what I was speaking of? I wish to speak about something in your body that is a key player, if you want to use that word, in the healing circle of 12. Something that if you don't know about it, now you will, and you may even scratch your head if you haven't heard this before. There are so many who understand, who know what innate is. But now I want to tell you. There is an intelligence in your cellular structure that is not necessarily represented in your brain. Your brain is the master computer and rememberer. It has a part of your consciousness, but not all. Your consciousness is really part of a triad between your pineal, representing the soul connection, your heart, and your brain. But your brain is not all that is. And even though it controls so much of what your body does, there is something called innate. And that innate is smarter than you are. It knows a lot more about what's going on in the body than you do. Now, for years, you might have heard about certain kinds of processes that use innate, but probably didn't understand that they were doing that very thing. One is called kinesiology. Kinesiology has another name, muscle testing.
Muscle testing and kinesiology is used even into science and even in mainstream doctors. It is something that is absolutely understood and known works. Why it works, perhaps not as well, but it works. Muscle testing will be sometimes used in order to test what your body wants in the number of doses of a medicine or a supplement. And that muscle testing will ask yes or no, yes or no. Is the body ready for this? Innate is responsible for one of the greatest healing modalities that exists on the planet, homeopathy. How can you take a tincture, which is a healing signal that is so small it is measured in parts per million, too small to have any kind of a chemical reaction from the body? You put it in your mouth under your tongue, and the body then performs what the tincture is for. Homeopathy has been used for centuries, and it works. In certain countries, when you go into a store to buy remedies, they will not sell you anything but homeopathy, because they know of the power of a signal under your tongue that your brain sees. That is innate, dear ones. Innate isn't simply responsible for these kinds of things. It goes further and further. Innate also corresponds with consciousness. Here's where I'm going that you should know. Have you heard of affirmations? And have you wondered why they might work? Someone says, I am healed, I am complete, I am pure. And that someone who is saying it may be lying in a sickbed. And you'll go, how odd that they would have a dichotomous statement when they're ill, stating that they are well. This is where innate starts to kick in, meaning starts to work, because there is a consciousness part of the innate that hears what you say, because you are the boss. The consciousness of your body is you. You are the boss of your cells. And when you state certain kinds of things, innate hears it, and just like the homeopathy, starts to implement the very things you are saying. Did you hear that? This is how powerful your consciousness is, as it starts a process that's always been there. We've also told you the opposite, that if you decide to tell your body it's worthless, your innate will kick in. In other words, it'll start a process of dis-ease, of unhealthy. If you're worthless, you don't even belong to be here. That is what you're telling your body. That is why we have always said, be careful what you say, because innate, the smart body, is listening. And when it hears the boss make statements, it does its best to implement. Just like if you had some tincture under your tongue that said, get sick, it would. That's how powerful all of this is, dear ones. It's called innate. My partner has talked about hypochondriacs and had a friend, he says, even from high school, who was afraid that he would catch everything and that he would die of cancer. All through his life, he was sick. And all through his life, my partner heard him say, well, I have this and I have that and I'm not going to live long. And he didn't. All through his life, he told his body what he was afraid of, and the body took care of it all. He caught everything he was afraid of and died of cancer. This is because he was programming himself for dysfunction. It goes both ways, dear ones. How about programming yourself for magnificence? In this healing circle, this circle of 12, innate is critical. Because as you start these visions that I have given you and that I will guide you through, and that some of you have been through with me in the premiere, As you start these visions, your smart body, your innate, will say, this is real. This is what the consciousness is going toward. Look, here's where we are. Here, look what's happening. Look, there's feet being washed. Look, there's healings going on. Look at the affirmation. And listening for what your consciousness has to say, who you are, and what's going to happen next. Your innate, dear ones, is part of this healing process. They call it the smart body for a reason, for a very good reason. It's smarter than you are. And sometimes, dear ones, it will even go around who you think you are. And what I mean by that is that when you get into a certain position, especially in these visualizations, that even that which you doubt, the innate will say, I'm smarter than that. How about we have a healing today instead of doubting today? This is the smart body, dear ones. This is what you're going to be using in every single healing circle. Conscious homeopathy plus a connection with the soul that you've never had before brings you to a place that is new. It's new. Connection at the soul level is something we have never, ever given you before in this way. This healing is not new. It is what spontaneous remission is also. You are looking at the processes of miracles you've seen before and never understood that they actually were processes built into the body that were so profound that they could have instant healings at any time. This is the energy we are working with, even today, later, and will work with every single week. Think of the profundity of this, something that you always had, that somehow comes awake, realized, and seen. Well, Kryon, if that's the case, then why don't you just do it once? I wish this were the way it works, but it does not, because through free choice, dear ones, you have learned so much against the way it works. There are those who've told you you're nothing and never will be. There are those who told you you have a creative source who loves you so much that it's going to punish you forever and your soul will be damned. How does that then work with the magnificence of your soul and your humanness and made as an image and all of these things you've been told? You have so much to unlearn if you want to stand in the presence of the real energy of the creative source who loves you so much. This is the teaching and the truth. Prayer, awesome as it is, works so much better when you start connecting with the source instead of on your knees pleading to it. Connecting to the source is that next step of spirituality that all of you have sought, no matter what your doctrine is. And all the masters that you've worshipped are right there in your soul. And you'll see them and you'll feel them and they can love you. Actually, it seems their hands will be out to take yours. This is where we're going. This is new. It's not a doctrine. It's not a religion. It's not a belief system, dear ones. It's just you with you. You either feel it or you don't. And as you'll know, as we go through these circle of 12, there will be so much to work on and unlearn and discover the true majesty of the Spirit of God inside yourself. There'll be more. And so it is.
Hello, I'm Lee Carroll. You know,